Jack O'Sullivan, welcome back to Irish Startup TV.
Cheers, Richie. Good to be back. Yeah. A
So I
lot's
feel
changed
like
since I've been
I feel like we're in the same room as we were in before, but we're not. I'm in Dublin and you're in Vietnam, but some similarities, but many differences.
on. Yeah, about 10,000 kilometers away this time.
That's
Well,
incredible.
yeah.
So when we met before, you had the Vital Fixies business.
Yes, so I started Vital Fixies when I was like 17 years old. I guess the original idea was that I wanted to buy a Fixie, like a single speed bike for Christmas. And they were really expensive, they were like 600 euro. So I remember I just found a supplier originally in China, and I kind of I just did the maths and I figured out that I could import them and maybe make a little bit of money. So I pitched the idea to my brother and my dad, and we brought in 165 bikes the first time,
Wow.
and that was 4 years ago. Yeah, we just had our 4 year birthday, and none of us realized.
Where it could
just
lead to.
Yeah, earlier this month. Yeah, lots happened since then. I was in school. I was in maybe fifth year in secondary school, and then I did a short stint in university, and
Yeah, when I
then
met you, I think you were doing a short stint at about 5 different universities. So you were attending one university, but you were picking up some subjects from another university. That's pretty interesting.
yeah, I mean, I guess I was always like really interested in business, and it was just that I wanted to learn some subjects that weren't taught in IDT. In first year we weren't studying law, and I had some friends studying law in UCD, so I just went with them, studied contract law for it was just about 6 months or so, and
Nice.
then I think I ended up doing a bit of traveling, and I never really went home after that.
Studying contract law, was that something that was useful for you at that time?
Oh well, yeah, because I'd be like using it the same day when I went home,
No
because
way. Okay.
yeah, well, like I might necessarily been buying off these suppliers, but like I'd always be, like I'd get an idea for like a new product or like something like this, and I'd be messaging them, and like yeah, I'd be like negotiating contracts sometimes, but like actually I didn't have the money to to like order in these products, but
But it was all learning. Like, it's kind of interesting to see that some big companies like Google have come out recently and said that a college degree is no longer necessarily going to be a prerequisite. Ernst
mm,
and Young in the UK came out with this logic maybe a year ago as well, which is quite a big move for professional services firm. But what for me strikes me as being quite interesting is that there is this new modular approach to learning, also with the MOOCs or the online studies with companies like Coursera
mm.
and Udemy. I think that I wonder to what extent, like, you started business when you were 17, and I don't know that there really was a sufficient course in Ireland that could give you the skills that you would need within 6 months to a year, which is probably what you need. The
Mm.
MBA option isn't an option, for example, which would probably give you those skills. But it seems like you can't do an MBA until you have a degree and you're about 30 or 40 in Ireland, which
Mm.
seems to be bizarre.
Yeah, I just found that if you're interested in something, like if that's kind of like if that's what your hobby is, pretty easy to do.
But it's more
Like
than a
if you,
hobby. You've got a business. So tell us then, going back to Vital Fixie. So you got to a certain point, and how did you end up in Vietnam?
yeah, during when I was running Vital Fixies, I kind of booked a spur of the moment trip to Thailand. It was just like a 2 week trip, and so that was like the first trip I'd ever taken on my own. So many people had said to me, they're like, "Oh, you have to try travel on your own." Anyway, I was kind of hooked from then. So 2 weeks changed to 3 weeks. As soon as I got home, I kind of knew that I didn't really want to live in Ireland anymore. So I figured out how I could just set up the whole business remotely.
No way.
Um, so that like that pretty much resulted in me in like the little warehouse we had before, which was in my uncle's basement. We just like we just like assembled all these bikes and moved them from like basically his basement to a fulfillment warehouse. So they'd store and ship the orders for me as soon as they came in. And then like everything after that, we were selling online. All our marketing was online really. So I was
So are you
able
still
to.
running that business then remotely?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Um, just I haven't been. It hasn't gotten much attention recently, just because like I've been working on trying to launch base bicycles for like a year full time now, but it's kind of been trying to
And
get
is
things
it still
started.
turning over as a function of
Yeah, for
being on the
sure.
internet? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you talk us through a little bit that process? What's required? Do you think it's important maybe to get some kind of traction in the early days, or if you just launch, like if somebody is watching this and they're saying, "Oh wow, I'd like to build an internet business," what are I suppose, what are your key learnings or key top tips from the experience so far?
Well, like it definitely helps. Like yeah, when you're kind of pre-established and you kind of have like that community of maybe you had like 1 or 200 sales at that point where people know that we have a good product. So like that helps. You also need to know that your product is like good because returns aren't as easy when you're 10,000 kilometers away. We've been pretty lucky that I think we've only ever had 2 returns or maybe
No way.
three. Yeah. Um, and like yeah, sometimes small parts break. It's a bicycle, but our bikes are like really simplified. They're super easy to ship, and like we just stock every single component on a bike. So it's like if something was to break, we could send it out next day. So
And
you kind of have to be a bit more organized in that sense. Whereas in like the early days, when I just got in the first shipment of bikes, we didn't have like all those like extra components and stuff. But I mean, like I just always recommend people to just go for it. Like you're always
just to
gonna have
try it,
code.
yeah.
Yeah, you can always make it work. You ring up your dad or your friend or something like, hey, can you
Can you
collect
sort
this
it out?
bike?
Yeah, yeah.
And, they showed up and I had a puncture or something like that. You know, these things happen, but
Do you have
um,
a sense of the demographic also of your customer? Was it somebody that was more familiar with bikes, or was was there any sort of average user or average end customer?
yeah, for sure. Like even specific regions, as in sorry, specific like villages in
No way.
Dublin specifically. I mean, like Rathgar, Blackrock,
Okay.
Slorgan,
But what I'm
like
getting at is that if you have a sense of, if you have a more educated user, as in someone who's maybe more familiar with bicycles, logically you're probably going to have less returns because they'll be able to sort out any glitches themselves. Do you have any sense of whether or not that was the case?
well, like our bikes aren't. We don't really like kind of target that group because they're generally going to go for like maybe the €1,000 road bikes.
Okay.
So like
So you have a
our
very generic
customers
user
aren't
base then.
usually, yeah, kind of like our bikes are, sort of like a fashion. It's like sort of like
Yeah.
a fashion thing,
Okay.
like yeah, it's a bike. Everyone uses it as their mode of transport, but they're not just like a bike you pick up at, you know, trendy looking and like for the age group that we sell to, which is I guess like 18 to kind of 35.
You were selling quite a niche specialized product, but it wasn't necessarily to a niche specialized market. It was to, I guess we've had almost like a revolution of bicycle users in the last couple of years. I certainly see it. I've been cycling for, I don't know, more years than I care to remember. But I'm
Mm.
certainly seeing an awful lot more people on the roads. And what I'm also seeing is a lot more what I would describe more as being casual users rather than the €1,000 plus road bike. So
Yeah.
the real question I was getting at was to what extent the product is not just this concept of product market fit and making sure you have a product that people want, but also maybe if someone is choosing an online business, that they choose a product that is maybe relatively straightforward, so it's less likely to return. Um, is that something that you'd consider or you'd advise people?
Yeah, like it's definitely something to consider for sure. Like I never set out to set up like, an online business that I'd end up living on the other side of the world, but it actually just turned out that that's what I wanted to do and it worked really well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and especially like so on me being in Vietnam, like upstairs, there's people from all over the world pretty much doing the same thing. And
No way.
well, like so what we say is like earn dollars and spend dong, because dong
Okay.
is the Vietnam currency.
Very good.
Because like you can make it a tiny wage and live a very good life here, because Ireland's so ridiculously expensive compared to somewhere like Vietnam, Thailand.
Can you give us some numbers then? How much does it cost to rent? Maybe like how does it work? Is it by room or by? Because in Ireland, typically, I guess people have two options. One is they rent a room with maybe in a house with maybe two or three others. Well, maybe if they're lucky, I guess that's changing now. Or the other option is you take on a lease of an entire apartment. What's the living like in Vietnam?
A few months ago, sort of when we were really like starting up base, I had like kind of been working with this American guy, Jordan. So we were living in a city called Da Nang in central Vietnam. So we rented a full house. It was like a 4-bedroom house. It was huge, had this massive workspace upstairs. The whole place was $400 a month.
Are you serious? Wow.
Yeah. So.
And like, it was engineered for working. There wasn't any sort of planning or regulatory issues. It was totally cool to just go in there and start living and start working.
Yeah, it's
wow. So it's very conducive of success.
Yeah, I mean, Vietnam's so set up for that. I think like all of Asia, they're kind of, you can do things straight away. You can just see it and be like, all right, I'll move in now.
No way. Okay.
That even happened. I was like, okay, I'll move in. And I just, when I moved to this city, my rent was like €100 a month. I just gave them the cash, and they were like, all right, we'll see you in 6 weeks when we collect our next rent.
No way. And is there very much then, is there a bureaucratic element that there's a risk that if you renege on the rent that they know it's very punitive, you're going to go straight to jail? Or is it just that it's a very trusting culture? Have you got any sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too sure. Like, I just never had any issues with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess sometimes it depends on the landlord. Like the first place I lived, I had to give a 1 month's deposit. Second place, I didn't have to give any deposit.
No way.
I think most of the time when you meet someone face to face, they just trust you.
That's incredible. And what's the accommodation like?
So that's the thing. It can vary so much, but like, for me, it's like, from anyone from Ireland, it's really cheap to have.
Yeah.
I live in like an apartment block. It's a 4-bed apartment that we share with some Americans and stuff. But like, we've got like tennis courts, swimming pools, we got ping pong. Like, I think they do free yoga in the mornings, like stuff like that. And it's maybe like $200 a month.
Wow.
So, it's pretty cheap. And also, this is like Ho Chi Minh City, which is the most expensive city in Vietnam. Like,
so what I'm really getting at, it's low cost, but you're not necessarily being compromised as a function of it being low cost.
The place I live now is way nicer than I would ever live in Ireland.
Really?
You're probably talking everything is 5 times the price in Ireland as it is here.
And what
From
about
a beer to like my lunch was less than €1.
Really?
Yeah, like everything.
And what about consumer electronics? Are they sort of pegged to international standards? Have you got a sense of like if you needed to buy a new iPhone or a laptop?
Yeah, I mean, like there's no Apple store in Vietnam, but I guess you're still gonna be able to go into the fancy like Samsung stores and stuff, and like you can spend money here if you have it, because like there's a pretty big, like there's like Vietnam is obviously a developing country, but there's also like a lot of rich people, like you'll still see your Range Rovers and Bentleys driving down the street, but also if you go to the north of Vietnam, like they're walking up the mountains to carry sticks home to burn the fire, and like
so it's quite a mix. So the cost of living is quite low, but if you want to buy consumer electronics, or if you have to buy consumer electronics, I guess what you're saying is that you're going to be paying similar prices to any other international destination. Well, that's reasonable. That's to be expected. What about like you're I'm just doing the math. You're like 21 right now.
22 now. Yeah.
22. So what are your peer group doing? Because I'm just trying to figure out. We met before. Like I guess some of the guys, certainly the guys doing law, they've probably graduated college already, have they?
Yeah. I try and keep in touch with people back home, but like it's usually you chat to them and I'm like, oh, what's new? And they're like, oh, nothing really.
Okay. I'm just
I
kind of
guess.
wondering, like, if you say you studied law, now I guess you'd be trying to get a contract with one of the solicitors firms. Maybe you'd be doing well to get 25 grand a year. Do you think that would be a viable option for you in terms of survival in life, leaving the business aside?
Well, like I have no interest in that, to be honest. Like,
What I'm really getting at is that it strikes me as being incredible that you have managed to give yourself a much better lifestyle at a very early on growth stage, both in terms of your own personal life, but also in terms of your business. Versus if you were staying in Ireland, maybe you'd be starting to think about moving out, and people are talking about a property crisis. Personally, I don't think we've got a housing crisis. I think we just have a mismanaged of property. I'm just wondering, like, how are your friends managing? How's your peer group managing?
I guess they're all still living at home. I don't know anyone that's moved out. Just like one or two have gotten like their first job. Maybe they studied computer engineering and they're working in a call center now. Trying to tell them to come over here because there's so many opportunities. Being a foreigner over here as well, you can walk into a job that you're not qualified for just because.
Really?
They value that a lot.
And what do they value? The English speaking, is it, or?
I mean, there's like the one thing, like being an English teacher, like that's always my backup if things ever go bad, because you can walk into a $25 an hour job here without any experience.
No way.
Just
do you need any certification or anything?
No.
No way.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you just wing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So to make you think then, so you see all of these kids as well. This is slightly going off in a slightly different direction, but you see so many people and they're on Instagram and they're like, oh, it's totally possible to work from Bali or whatever. And there's always a bit of skepticism that says, how many graphic designers, can the world actually cope with living in Bali? So two aspects to that question. Firstly, have you seen, because you alluded to there being a lot of foreigners in the building with you, what kind of sense of like, is there just this ridiculous saturation that all of these beauty spots in Thailand and so forth are all just being completely overwhelmed with people trying to make it? And then the second part of the question is, to what extent are people actually doing well out of this, or is it just a fantasy for Instagram?
No, I think big time. Like, there's tons of people doing it, and like honestly, everyone seems to be doing like really good.
Wow. Okay.
Like even some of the graphic designers that work for me, like they're definitely not stuck for money. They're just, everyone's kind of like you take it a lot easier because you need so little money to live that everyone's just like, they're not going to work all day. They're just going to work for a few hours and then go like surfing or something. Like, awesome. Yeah, you say Bali, like that's probably the most popular spot.
Yeah.
That's just full of foreigners.
No way.
But I mean, everyone loves the lifestyle, and like, I think it's 100% doable. I recommend it for everyone.
Awesome. So getting back to you and to Base, so tell us a little bit about Base and how you're evolving. So Vital Fixies is kind of almost doing its own thing now. It's almost, I guess the ultimate thing would be to have it automated, but it sounds like it's getting pretty close to that. So tell us a little bit about Base. What is it, and how did you decide to evolve in that direction?
Yeah, so it was really after I finished university, and I had met this guy, his name's Bob Coggins. He's actually like an investor in Base now. But I met him at a stag party, and I told him what I was doing. He was like, "Oh, that sounds great. You should, we've got some space at the back of our office."
Was that in Ireland?
Yeah, just on Leeson Street.
Oh, wow, okay.
So he was like, "Yeah, just come on in. You can have a desk, be around some creative people." So that was kind of when I was cycling from Cabinteely to the city centre every day. So it's like 40 minutes each way. And I was cycling my Fixie. So, I kind of realized that like that's a bit too far to go on a single speed bike, And around that time, electric bikes were like starting to come along, but they're still like, they were just bikes with a big battery attached on the back.
Very big bikes as well, yeah.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, I was just like, there's like the down tubes on bikes, you can fit batteries in there, no problem. And then from there, I knew that like the next logical step was, yeah, like electric bikes was going to be the next big thing in bikes. And then I kind of thought like, well, what are the other problems? And for me, is like if I'm cycling to work, you know, the only option is to put a bag on your back to bring all your stuff. You know, it's not really, you can't really just like, it's not like a car where you can just throw all the shopping in the back and throw the kids in the back. You know, you can't really adapt to your lifestyle. So I kind of started thinking like, you know, what can I do? So I guess I had the idea to make the bike modular. So I knew a guy. He worked for one of the big bike brands, and he'd recently left his job, and he was an engineer for them. He'd done like incredible things for their brand. So I saw he left.
And was this in Ireland, or how did you meet this guy?
I knew him from back when I was racing mountain bikes when I was younger.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. So I just messaged him. I was like, hey, I have this idea. I think we can make a modular bike. You know, we can design these mounts, and then all these accessories to go along with it. So, you know, we can put a mount on the front and the back, and you know, if you want to add a child seat on the back, if you're bringing your kid to school, you can just clip it on. Then later, if you're going shopping, you can put a, you know, like a cargo box on the front and throw the shopping in that. Or if you need to do anything else, you know, you can hook a trailer on. You know, it's really just like a mount, and then we can add all these like different things to it. It just means the bike can adapt to your lifestyle, and
awesome.
Yeah, just replace your car really.
So are you thinking in terms of engineering a bike that has this special fixed point attached, or are you thinking of engineering a special fixed point that can attach to any bike?
Like we've designed it already.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. We're working on 2 models. Tested the first one there about a month ago. Seriously impressed. It's got a long way to go, but actually I was way more impressed than I imagined.
Oh, okay. And tell us then about how do you go building a bike, and how is your geographic location convivial to that experience?
Yeah, so that was kind of like 2 things that were good for me. So number one is like when I got to Vietnam, I just loved it straight away, you know, because it was really like low cost of living, and it was just such an adventure, you know. It's the complete opposite to home. And after I'd been working with this new engineer, he mentioned he'd like heard of this bike factory that was in Vietnam, you know, and he was telling me like it was like a Tesla factory, really, you know. It was just robots welding, like all this type of thing. I was like, all right, I'm gonna fly down there next weekend. So I just saw the factory. I was like, all right, this is it. So I guess I ended up living here, but like the center of the world of bikes is still Taiwan.
Really?
You know? Yeah, like all the component manufacturers are there, like in one small city.
It's funny, it was a center of PCB board manufacturing, like back in the day. Alan Sugars, that's where he got all his electronics manufactured as well.
Yeah, like it's, you know, so I just kind of spend my time between both, because there's just so much that goes into a bike, and especially when like, we're not, like, so much of what we're doing is like completely new, you know. We gotta just develop like so many new different parts, so it makes sense for me to like kind of spend my time between where all the component suppliers are and where we'll be manufacturing the frames. And also that this is like a new startup that had been like running after revenue from Vital Fixies up until recently, so I didn't have money to base. Would have never happened if I was living in Ireland, you know. Could not have afforded it at all.
And why is that? Because of the cost of living, or because of the importance of having to actually check out the factories?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
You gotta, it needs to be hands-on the whole way.
And how much does it cost to move around? Like, for example, if you're in Vietnam right now and you want to go down to Taiwan, how much is it going to cost you, and how practical? Like, is it a day? Is it an hour?
Yeah, I could book they do a 1 a.m. flight to Taipei, which I usually get. It'll be €50. I could book. Are you
serious? Right. Yeah. So you can literally just go right now to Taiwan for €50.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
No visa.
So. And once you get there, how expensive is it? It's for a hotel if you want to stay.
Well, one thing I would never stay in a hotel. That's
really
just,
wow. Okay.
I have not stayed in a hotel like ever on my travels.
No way.
I just
Where
always
do you
stay in a
live?
hostel.
Really? Okay.
Always, yeah, because it's like, and it's the same. Like I would never get a taxi. I would always take public transport or,
Perfect.
try to
Yeah,
get a
yeah.
bike from somewhere. Because like all that adds up to be so much. Never eat in a restaurant. Always eat street food.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just kind of
Okay.
working in a startup. You
And do you
have
ever
to.
worried about like getting some kind of mad disease, or like have you ever been properly sick, or have you ever been robbed during this experience?
No. And like
Wow.
that's one thing people say that to me like all the time, and I'm like, the day I get sick or like the day I get robbed, maybe I'll worry about it then. But
Yeah.
I've been over here a year now, and like none of this
Wow.
stuff has happened. Yeah, so I don't
So
worry about it.
fortune really does favor the brave, literally. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think so. But actually, so like in Taiwan, because I've kind of been going there quite a lot, I just stay with the production manager in his apartment. So,
no way.
Yeah, that kind
So you've kind of made friends now already through the guys you're working with.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little family, we're all, we just hang out together and go drinking together in the evenings and stuff.
No way, that's amazing. So that must help to build a trust as well, because like that, I mentioned the trust. We were talking about trust in terms of renting accommodation. Like how can you trust, or how do you figure out how to trust or how to legislate for trusting somebody with potentially a lot of money? Like you mentioned, I think, did you say something about retooling a factory to set up your bikes? Have you had to have a lot of outlay of cash so far?
Well, that's where like the relationship comes into it. Is like,
okay,
like working with the guys in Taiwan. Like, so pretty much we can like prototype with them, and then when it goes into manufacturing, we'll actually use a different factory. So like we can prototype and make samples really quickly in China, but like
really?
we would never, like we just would never actually produce in China because like lots of reasons, but like tax and quality, and it's too far away, and like you want to be able to keep an eye on things.
Yeah.
But like, so having just such a good relationship with the guys in Taiwan, is like they pretty much know exactly what I want. If a part arrives
Amazing.
in the office there, like, they already know that I'm not going to be happy with it before they send pictures to me or before I see it.
No way.
We're all on the same page.
So is there a sense as well then of an attention to detail and a care in terms of the guys you're working with? That has to be a cultural thing. That's more than just a relationship thing.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are like experts. Yeah, like that. This is what they do all day, every day. Like they know every supplier, every like tiny bolt. Like if I mention like we had a tiny problem with the bike, he's like, oh, they used the wrong screw on that. Like,
you serious? No way.
Straight away, yeah. Like
no way.
Yeah, so I think without the 4 guys in Taiwan, we wouldn't be able to do it really.
It's incredible. So what is the critical success factor there? And how did you bring that about? Was it the fact of traveling over there and building those relationships?
It is. It's the relationships the whole way. It's making sure that everyone's on the same page. And I think like when you go to a factory and they say like, what price do you want this at? And you just have to be clear, like, do not make any compromise on quality. Like, I pretty much be like, I don't care how much it's going to cost, just make it as good as you possibly can. And like, I think once they understand that and they're like, okay, we can just do our best work here and make the best product we can.
A friend of mine, he's done some manufacturing out in Taiwan, and he said that quite often the focus is on getting a better price. So if he leaves the guys alone, they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, look, I've saved you money. So do you think, is there a sort of a natural desire? And again, this is speaking, I really shouldn't be generalizing that like this, but just because you mentioned that they did mention cost rather than product quality, do you think they maybe are very quick to go for a cheaper price rather than a better quality? Or is that something that you really have to be firm about when specifying design?
Yeah, well, like the Chinese would definitely be pushing towards more like lower prices. But like as a rule of thumb, like these, like a lot of the suppliers, they have like so many different options that like you can kind of tell them what price you're aiming for, and then they'll be able to build the product kind of like to that price.
Wow. Okay.
So like that's even one of the mistakes I made in like the first batch of bikes is, I I thought I could just kind of give them a price, they're gonna make it for that. But then, once you start actually testing the bikes, you realize no, you can't just like cut down. You can't, lower your cost by 10% and not see any difference in the quality. Um, but yeah, like I guess a lot of the companies probably put pressure on them to lower the costs because if it's a CEO high up in the company, like they're not gonna probably see the result in a quality cut. Whereas if I do everything, like
You're gonna notice it straight away, yeah.
yeah, like I get the emails from the customers and everything like that. So
And the other key aspect of this is that a lot of bike manufacturers will use other people's components. Like Shimano are probably one of the biggest component makers in the world. Like nearly every bike seems to have a Shimano component. So what are you doing in terms of your design? Are you going to use other people's components to a degree, or are you building everything bespoke to your brand?
well, yeah, we'll use other people's components. Like we might use a Shimano hub or something like that.
So you're
But
going to use a mix of third-party established brands for certain components, and then in other instances you're going to be building your own. Like your fixing is going to obviously have to be custom and bespoke because it's something that it's proprietary.
yeah, like I think it's just when I see something that I would like to have it that way. Like if I think I can make it better, I'll just do it myself.
Okay.
But yeah, we can't. There's probably like 50 odd parts on a bike, and they all have like 10 different processes and being made. So maybe the end goal is to have a complete bike made by ourselves. But
Wow. Okay.
there's
For
a lot
now,
of work.
it's okay. Okay. So I kind of just a final question, just I suppose to complete the kind of the whole understanding of how you've managed to move from Ireland to Vietnam to do business overseas, to give a sense of where the opportunities lie. Certainly in terms of getting proper access to the manufacturers, and also the obvious much lower living costs. But the other aspect is it looks like you're in a really nice office space. What kind of money is involved in renting the space?
€50 a month.
Really? Wow. Okay. That's
Yeah,
incredible. And does that
it's insane.
include your access to internet and some snacks and so forth?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
As I said, everything is one-fifth the price of Ireland. This is probably even less. Because like Vietnam is such a popular place for kind of digital nomads or whatever. There's just tons of co-working spaces and
No way.
even like the super nice ones in the fancy buildings. I kind of tried them all. I like moving around. You just
Yeah,
kind of meet more people.
of course.
Because I don't have anyone working for me now.
Yeah.
Like before I did, so I'd stick in the same place. But then, kind of once I get freed up, I like just kind of getting a sense of everywhere, different areas and stuff.
Amazing. So it's definitely something you'd recommend. Okay, well, Jack, it's been a pleasure to catch up, and also we can announce that we've been chatting a little bit behind the scenes, and we're going to aim to have kind of a weekly check-in with you to keep an eye on the progress of your business, and also to maybe have a kind of a Jack in Asia kind of spot where you're going to share with us when you find interesting opportunities, and we can start to learn a little bit about what it's like to live in Asia, and maybe some top tips. If you're thinking of moving your business to Asia, we can learn from you as you progress over the next couple of months. So I'm really looking forward to this collaboration.
Yeah, and actually, next week I will be down on a small island just off the coast of Vietnam. So
Amazing. So
yeah,
it's going to be very exciting to see your environs next week.
yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of kind of like being in Asia. There's just like so many beautiful places that you can get so fast, so easy, so cheap.
Savage.
Great Wi-Fi, co-working spaces everywhere. I take advantage of it. I guess the week after I'll probably be in Taiwan, but yeah, I guess we can wait and see.
Fantastic. Okay, awesome. So Jack O'Sullivan, thanks very much for your time, and look forward to catching up next week.
Cheers.
Brilliant.